Hi everyone, this is Mattjestic Gaming, and I'm here to bring you a Dota auto chess tier list. So this is different to the guides we usually make daily because we have been receiving a lot of requests from different level of players to be looking at tier list. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do several different form of tier list because I find that it's most informative and most helpful for us to look at several different form of tier list instead of just one. So we're going to start with this general picture over here. As you can see, they are basically the synergies and the class over here. Basically, they're the races. So we go from the beast to the warrior. I'm not going to explain much, but I think most of us knows what each of those are. And most of us knows we can read on the description that what each of those races do. So I'm going to highlight a few races which are kind of the current meta race that really excel. So one of the races are elves. The other race are druids. Elves and druids works quite well. Goblins excels in the early game, and mages excels with a combination of something tanky or something that does AoE damage as well, which are goblins, orcs, druids, and even elves. Mages can work in a lot of things. Shamans works well with trolls and with orcs. So this is quite brave. So what I'm doing right now is I'm giving a brave description, and although this is brave, I want to introduce you guys to all the elements that are there. So if you're unfamiliar with this entire format, so please pause now and have a look at each of the races. I won't go into each of them in detail as I will be explaining the tier list as we go. So each unit will have a race and a class, and I'm sure most of us knows there goes from assassins down to warrior by the alphabet. I won't be going into the class in detail as well because I find it's most helpful when I go through the units. So if anyone that's new to this, please pause and please have a quick look at this. So to get familiar with the actual class, and sometimes knowing the class really helps us. Okay, let's get the tier list started. Right now, we're looking at the tier list that I just created recently. And this tier list, which I created today, is a tier list of all the units that are in auto chess. Now there's an advantage about this, there's a disadvantage about this. The advantage is we get to compare almost all the units, and we have a really quick look, and I'll explain why each of the units are positioned where they are. So Anti-Mage is positioned on top for his early game advantages. Beastmaster is positioned on top for his early game advantages. As you can see, as I get into them, some of them are positioned for early game, some of them are positioned for mid game, and some of them for the late game. So because of this, while I was making this tier list, I realized this, although it provides a holistic picture, it doesn't summarize the whole story. And I find so many other tier lists online that does the same thing. So after completing this tier list, what I realized is I need to be more detailed, and I need to explain exactly why we're picking those units. Because in comparison, in the late game, we prefer Tide Hunter than Anti-Mage any day, unless you're looking for the last Anti-Mage to get 3-star. So because of this, what we're going to do is we're going to post on this tier list. We're going to come back to it at the end, and we're going to go to a different format of tier list. So you can pause here if you want to have a look at this tier list. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at this tier list. Now this is a 1-star tier list. So all the units here are 1 cost. Looking at this 1 cost tier list, what we're looking at is early game. And in the early game, so this is after round 4. From round 5 to round 15, we'll be getting a lot of 1-star units. And how are we choosing and deciding between those 1-star units? Let me explain. Anti-Mage currently has a great meta synergy with elves and druids because of the evasion. On top of that, Anti-Mage is a demon hunter, and Anti-Mage does great lockdown with his mana burn. So in the early game, my top preference is Anti-Mage or Bounty Hunter, sometimes both. Bounty Hunter on the side is one of the best damage dealer as 1-star. Now 1 vs 1, Bounty Hunter might lose to Anti-Mage or Clockwork, but in most cases, Bounty Hunter is free to do damage in the back as Assassin, and Bounty Hunter's Shuriken has a really low CD and great damage, and it also has a mini stun that can cancel some animations as well. So Bounty Hunter is top for its damage and itself being an assassin with high burst damage. Anti-Mage is up there because Anti-Mage not only have 5 armor, Anti-Mage also have 20% magic resistance. In the early stage of the game, when you want Anti-Mage as a bruiser, everything counts. Now, our second in line is Clockwork. Clockwork is ranked highly within the 1-cost units because Clockwork's ability to be a really good browser to have 1 vs 1 or 1 vs 2 battles. On top of that, Clockwork is a part of the Goblin class, and being the Goblin class, the Clockwork is also a mech. The mech have 15 regeneration per second of life, and having 3 goblins on the field, we will be getting a random nanobot buff. So having the Clockwork not only synergizes well with its tanky frontline, also the Clockwork has the mini stuns after casting. So for the next few seconds, the Clockwork will be mini stunning most of the enemy next to him randomly. This mini stun really works well in terms of its damage dealing if Clockwork stays alive, and really works out cancelling the enemy attack animation. So Clockwork is ranked second or tier A for me within the 1-cost units. Now, I won't be explaining all of those units in detail because this will take us quite a bit of time. So I'm going to go through the tier list with B and C and F with quite short, with a shorter explanation. So X, because X doesn't have a nuke, X is ranked here because he's a suitable tank early, but because he doesn't have a damaging spell, X is ranked in the middle of the range. X goes well with Orcs, and X goes well with Warriors. So the downside is, as a 1-star, that doesn't give us much, and very soon the 2-star X that we have on the board will be retiring when we have a 2-star 2-cost unit or 2-star 3-cost unit. Enchantress is not ranked highly within the 1-star list simply because in the very early game we need other druids for the Enchantress to be combined as a druid. Otherwise she can be ranked A or S depending on the situation. And all the units down here, the C units and F units, require a particular synergy to work. Here what I'm looking at is, if you were going to pick 1-star units directly, those units are not preferable as they provide less board presence and less value for you. So they are ranked C and F for me. Let's have a look at the tier list for 2-star units. I made this one after the 1-star list, knowing that there's a few units that I really want to look into and I really want to explain. So on top of the tier list, we can see Beastmaster. There's a few reasons why Beastmaster is on top there, and one of the particular reasons is that Beastmaster excels in the early game, where most units don't do enough damage, and he actually gains enough mana to be doing 1x swing or even 2x swing. Each of his X swing increases his physical damage dealing to the enemy. His X's are also physical damage, so if you had any physical armor reduction from Alchemist or even from the Corruption Orb that -3 armor, any other units that minus armor like Slaughter, Beastmaster does great damage without minus armor, and he does incredible damage with minus armor. And being an Orc, Beastmaster enjoys the 250 health bonus for having 2 Orcs on the board. So for his early game combat readiness and his damage dealing AoE, I pick Beastmaster as my top unit for 2-star. Now other than Beastmaster, you can see a pattern here. The 3 units I'm picking after Beastmaster are Queen of Pain, Timbersaw, and Juggernaut, simply for the early game AoE powers and for the ability to be able to cast at least one or 2 spells quickly enough. Now Juggernaut is magic immune, while Queen of Pain and Timbersaw have a really short cooldown, so those units are likely to be casting 2 AoEs instead of just 1. As you can see, the third down the line, we have 6 units that are particularly handy in particular situations. For the druids here, I haven't ranked them that highly because I feel that a 2-star druid is weaker than any other 2-star unit. Now, saying that, there's no excuse that we always seen druids running over people around 10 to around 15 or around 15 to 20 because they have the druid synergy of 4 druids and combines into a 3-star druid really quickly, or even if they're running elves. So those are situational. What we're looking right now is within the 2 cost range, what units I would prefer. Crystal Maiden, Puck, and Viper are situational units as well. The 3 dragons are very strong, no denying that. But until we get a DK, the Puck, oh sorry, this is not a Viper, this is a Morphling. So the Puck is very strong once we get our 3 dragons. Crystal Maiden is very strong late game for its mana recharging capacities and for itself being a mage. While Morphling can be combined with the Tiny to provide a little stun at a 30% passive for the elementals. But those 3 units, when looking at a comparison of 2-star units, I'll prefer the other units compared to them because they lack a certain condition to be met for them to be useful. Let's look at the 3-star unit tier list. So right now we have Razor on top, and down bottom we have Lina and Slug. To stick with my tier list guide, what is happening right now, maybe some of you have noticed, is I'm preferring AoE instead of single target. I'm also preferring units that brings more to the board instead of units that requires a synergy. This is because we're viewing a tier list simply for the 3-star monsters. Now, within the tier list, Razor is ranked highly for several things. Razor does a great amount of AoE at level 2. Razor can be combined into Archmage builds, Mage builds, Dragon Mage builds, and other builds that requires a bit of AoE. Razor is one of those units that is all-rounded, and although Razor doesn't excel in terms of its attack damage compared to Shadowfang, it excels in terms of its low CD, 10 seconds AoE, usually we can get 1 or 2 lightning off, and it excels in terms of its versatility. Razor can fit in most builds, and Razor is almost a great addition for most builds as well. After Razor, Lycan, Shadowfang, and Terrorblade each have its uniqueness. Lycan, if at level 1, can bring a surprise amount of physical damage and destruction. 2 things. Physical damage is great, we have units that bring physical damage, but the destruction part can be very interesting. Lycan, when wolves are summoned, the unit AI will automatically adjust the wolves for a split second. Sometimes this will be just a second for your other units to deal damage, or as the wolves jump, the unit AI for the enemy units will be confused for a second. This is not always the case, and sometimes the wolves are really weak at level 1. But knowing most of us fear Lycan from round 10 to round 20 simply for its ability to do additional HP damage to the player that loses to Lycan because of its summons, and it works really well with the Zoo build. So Lycan is up here for its easy to use and for its ability to be used at level 1 and level 2. Shadowfang here used to be on my top list, where Razor is. Now he's fallen because of the Raisin changer to his damage, so 1-star Shadowfang doesn't do that much damage compared to usual, but Shadowfang is still very great in terms of its AoE and single target. The downside for Shadowfang is that it doesn't have enough HP pool, so usually I give some HP item to the Shadowfang. Being a Warlock, Shadowfang really works well for a lifesteal lineup with 3 Warlock, and this works well with Necros and Undead and Alchemist. Shadowfang is one of those key units that we can fit into a troll build, which we'll touch on very soon once we see the trolls. And being at the second tier list for me, Shadowfang is still a very good unit. Terrorblade has recently gotten a really strong buff. Now when Terrorblade casts his Metamorphosis, when he transforms into a demon that has range attack, increased damage, and increased attack speed, he also swaps his health with the ally with the highest health. Now there's several things regards to this. If the Terrorblade is taking damage and all of a sudden he gets back to full health, it's likely whoever is doing damage to the Terrorblade will die to the Terrorblade. So Terrorblade all of a sudden became one of those top tier bruisers that excels from round 10 or even in the early stage of the rounds as level 1 as 1-star unit. Terrorblade really excels from round 10 to round 20, and this is when we want those early game powers for us to be saving our health and getting win streaks. Terrorblade is not on my S tier list simply for the fact that he falls off if we don't get him to 3-star after round 20 and he falls off because he's a single target damage dealer that doesn't provide enough value to the board. Why is that providing values? I mean AoE controlling, or in terms of summoning, that is really crucial. I won't be touching the lower tier units in detail, but simply to summarize that Abaddon and Omni are knights. They're great because they're tanky and because they have 10 armor. The downside is they have a quite long CD and they don't do as much damage. So usually what I'm prioritizing the 3-star unit is the round 10 to round 30 mark. So this is when the 3-star units really shine when they get to 2-star. So when the 3-cost unit really shine when they become 2-star. So the Venom, Viper, Wind Ranger, and Sand King. Venom runs great if you have a zoo build. Viper requires a dragon activation, while Wind Runner really requires a mana to be charged quickly. Sand King can be situational. He can be godlike with his stuns, like a mini Ravage, or he can be really bad with his stuns, or sometimes he dies because he cannot survive enough damage to get his stuns off. I particularly don't favor the Phantom Assassin, and I don't think Sniper is that feasible unless we're running a Hunter build, because Sniper requires a good frontline, Sniper requires a good synergy with Hunters, a Sniper requires minus armor. There's so many things that are required of Sniper that he didn't suit me well when I was comparing only 3-cost units. Now Lina and Slug, on the other hand, one is a single target mage with quite long CD, one is an assassin that doesn't deal enough damage. Being at 2-star, those two units are still not very strong for me. And if we check the stats on the different forums and different Mattjestic, those two units usually have the least win rate. Phantom Assassin, I know a lot of people like Phantom Assassin. Personally, I feel that if we have 3 assassins, the critical from Phantom Assassin is great, but since we already have a critical from assassins, wouldn't it be better to have a nuke as assassin instead of another 10% of critical? So that's just personal preference, but so I left her here. Let me know what you guys think about Phantom Assassin as well. Now let's look at the 4-star units. The 4-star units are the ones that are really interesting. They are the deal breakers, and they can really help us excel in terms of mid-game powers. They can be our jackpot unit, or they can be our unit that brings a lot to the table. So, explaining all this, let me try to show you guys what exactly I meant by that. A lone druid, we all know 4 druids allows us to combine druids with only 4 1-star units, we can get a 3-star. A lone druid itself is not very strong at level 1, but it's so easy to get him to level 2. So I almost always see people with a level 2 lone druid. Sometimes I even run level 2 lone druid into the late game, say round 30 plus, just for the bear and its ability to root enemies, and its ability to provide additional tankiness, and its magic resistance. Compared to lone druid, Disruptor is still very relevant in almost every lineup I see. Disruptor is great for its Orc synergy, it's great for its ability to instant hex with Shadow Shaman. Disruptor is great for its AoE silence and its AoE damage. Just to give you guys a figure why Disruptor is so great. Disruptor at level 2 does 200 damage per second for 3 seconds. That's 600 damage AoE at a 10-second cooldown. Now, if Disruptor is placed at the front, he usually dies after he placed his first storm. But those 3 seconds, that 600 AoE damage, is equally as high as a 2-star Gyro with a cooldown. It has a shorter range, a smaller range, but it has a silence. So we can consider Disruptor as a mini Gyro that's a 2-star with its cooldown reduced in size but into silence. So that's how strong Disruptor is. Disruptor also is one of the key initiators for most builds. I can run Disruptors in Goblins, I can run Disruptors in Elves, I can run Disruptors with Warriors, even with well, mages of course, even with hunters, because hunters, they really want to get the first upper hand, for their hunters to be at the back, for the snipers, for the draw rangers to be dealing physical damage, and Disruptor stops all the enemy stuns, all the ties if he gets his spells off. So Disruptor is quite crucial as an initiator. There's only a few initiators in my opinion, so Disruptor is definitely the top tier initiator. Looking at the other units, Conquer is great for his tankiness. He has 1000 HP, I think, and he has 10 armor at level 1. Even a level 1 Conquer, when he gets his bolt off, the stun and the damage is very relevant. Although the bolt has a 3-second delay, Conquer himself can fit in almost any build. The Conquer at level 1 can replace almost all the non-core 1 cost units at 2-star. So let's explain what that means. So if I have a Clockwork on the board, I don't need the Clockwork for its Goblin synergy, and I'm already 20 rounds into the game. By placing a Conquer, I have a chance to do AoE stun and AoE damage. In comparison, a 2-star Clockwork is not going to be as great impact compared to a 1-star Conquer. Now, Doom, on the other hand, is the opposite of a Conquer. Doom is quite tanky, but not as tanky, but Doom provides a crucial lockdown with its Doom. Doom's AI is designed very nicely, and if he does get his Doom off before the Lone Druid summons the bear, or before Disruptor or Tide do their spells, Doom can be crucial winning a fight. Now the downside with the Doom is because it is single target, sometimes Doom is dooming a target that already casted a spell, and sometimes 1-star Doom might not survive long enough. So in comparison, I'll prefer Conquer than Doom, but that's just personal preference. Of course, Doom runs pretty well with a few warrior lineups, and runs pretty well with any lineups that wants a 2-star Doom, because having a demon and having a 4-star demon really helps the lineup. Alchemists and Necromancers are really underrated. Alchemist, sometimes I run Alchemist for physical damage lineup without the goblins, simply because the asset spray minus armor is so underrated, but it provides so much for the board. The enemy simply melts when they're standing on top of asset spray, and asset spray itself does some decent damage over time. So it's about 150 physical damage over time. With the armor reduction, it's almost 150 pure damage. Necromancer, on the other hand, has a low CD, I think 6-second CD for his heal and damage. So Necromancer can be a healer and a damage dealer, and if we run any undead with the Necromancer, the -5 armor is very relevant in the early stage of the game, even mid stage of the game. Now, Deucer and Templar are situational heroes. If we needed great control, I think a Disruptor will be on top of the Deucer, even a Conquer, because Deucer itself doesn't recharge mana as fast, and it also takes Deucer 3 seconds to stun the enemy when they stare at her. Now, saying that, Deucer is very crucial with the late game builds, and sometimes a 2-star Deucer can change the game, similar to Templar Assassin over here. Templar Assassin can jump to the back line, become a physical damage dealer, and become a great distraction with her refraction. She can be a semi-tank in the backline, and sometimes she will be able to distract 2 to 3 backline units, while your frontline is doing great damage to the enemy frontline. So those two units are situational because some build takes them as a core, say hunters or elves, and some other builds find them also useful simply for the utility they bring. So having them at B is because I really want to highlight the other units at S tier and A tier. Now, when we look at the last tier of the 4-star units, Keeper of the Light, Troll Warlord, and Dragon Knight all have these synergies. And because they're so limited by their synergies, if you run them particularly without their synergies, without mages and without Crystal Maiden for Keeper of the Light, without the Trolls for the Troll Warlord, and without Dragons for the Dragon Knight, unless you have 4 Knights or 6 Knights, they are very slow at what they provide. And because of the limitations, I have put them on the bottom of the list in comparison to the all 4-star units, or 4 cost units we're looking at. Now let's look at the 5 cost units. There's only 5 cost units, and they're all legendaries. So, and I think most of you would have guessed, I put Tide on the top of the list for him being one of the other top initiator in the game. I think the two top initiators in the game are Tidehunter and Disruptor for me. Now, simply because they have an almost instant cast, and in so many game replays I have seen Tidehunter and Disruptor get their spells off while a 3-star anti-mage or 2-star anti-mage is attacking them directly, because they're perfect instant cast attack mentions and because the initiation abilities to be casting while the mana is full. So they can be a frontline at 2-star, and they are almost one of those units that everyone goes for. So it's great to get your hands on one, even if you don't plan to use them, because you reduce the amount of units other people are going to get. Now in comparison, I am more happy to have AoE that are burst than AoEs that are slow. So why do I have Gyro and Lich on top? It's because Gyro and Lich both are magic damage. Lich is a pure magic damage dealer, while Gyro is a physical and magic damage dealer. Gyro can be placed at the very back, and usually you can get one cooldown from Gyro. Gyro has a really good attack speed and a really high armor. Level 1 Gyro has 15 armor, 10-second cooldown, and we do 400 AoE damage at a massive radius. Lich, on the other hand, has a Charm Force, and this Charm Force not only does great magic damage, it also slows down the enemy attack speed. So when would I prefer Gyro and Lich is when my lineup just need a bit of damage, that is AoE, or just need the lockdown for the Dragon Knight or for the elves that are jumping around. Because sometimes the enemy units have too much armor like goblins, warriors, too much evasion like elves, or sometimes you just can't reach them because they're hunters. This is when Gyro and Lich can provide a burst of damage that we can break the front line and get to the back line. Techies and Enigma, on the other hand, when they are singled out by themselves, provide less utility to the team, because Techies really excels when he is round in a 6-goblin lineup. But when Techies is not in a 6-goblin lineup, he excels in a minus armor lineup, because his bomb is physical damage. The downside for Techies is that level 1 he doesn't charge as fast. At level 2 he's great, but it's hard to get him to level 2 or 2-star. A level 1-star Techie doesn't charge his mana as fast, and sometimes he dies without placing his bomb. And sometimes the bomb position is not so that he hits most of the enemy units, because sometimes he places the bomb behind himself. And the bomb also has a 3-second delay. I've seen games where I was able to kill most of the unit with the bomb, but before most of those units die to the bomb, the death coil from the HP damage already hit my courier before they were killed by the bomb. And similarly, Enigma is great in terms of its PvE potential. It has pure damage, so it does great damage to the late game rounds 35, 40, 45, and Enigma is great against tanky lineups. The downside for Enigma again is its slow mana recharge and its long CD, and also it's not a burst damage. Enigma's constant damage is great against tanky lineup like warriors, goblins, elves, and a lineup that box up in a group, because there's so much pure damage that's sustained. Sometimes you just watch those knights die when they still have the armor on. The downside, of course, being having a 20-second CD, a 1-star Enigma almost never get his second spell off, and 1-star Enigma sometimes can be assassinated by assassins in the back before he even get his spells off. And other times, 1-star Enigma cannot get his spells off fast enough, so while my entire lineup dies, the Enigma is still recharging his mana, and when he casts his Midnight Pulse, I'll need 10 seconds more for him to do the damage he needs to do, and most of my units would have died by then. So, seeing this, let me just have a look over here. So yes, let's double check at my previous tier list. This tier list is the overall summary of what we just looked at from 1-star to 5-star. Now, after a bit of explanation, maybe we can see a bit of the reason why some units are on top, because each unit are basically ranked due to their early gameness, mid game, or the late game. So if we were just looking at a tier list like this one that's overall summarized, it's hard for us to differentiate when do we want what unit. And This is why I broke the tier list down into 5 segments in comparison of 1 star, 2 star, 1 cost to 5 cost. Now, to give us a basic summary before I finish this stream, because I don't want this to run too long for the YouTube guys, and I really want this to be concise for the first guide of a tier list. The basic summary is we have 1 cost unit and 2 cost unit simply for the early game powers, because we need early game powers to have our win streaks, and we need early game powers to sustain ourselves and to have some savings for mid game. So those are the tier lists for 1 cost, and those are the tier lists for 2 cost. I'm preferring the 1 cost and 2 cost for the burst potential or the lockdown and booster potential. Now, when we get to the 3 cost tier list, I'm preferring them for the utility and the magic AoEs in a majority of the cases. And also for the lack of limitation, because the top of the tier list can be fit into almost any build, while the bottom of the tier list can't fit into most of the builds. Now, once we go to the 4-star tier list, all of a sudden it became initiators, value builders, and synergies. See how the initiator is usually on top, while the synergies and value builders are usually after him, and the utility makers are down there, middle of the range, while the hard to fit or the conditional units are usually down in the bottom, because half the time we see them, we never attack them. Other half the time we're desperately searching just for 1 more troll or 1 more DK. Now the last tier list is optional. Some builds really want a lich, say we have 4 undead, some builds really need a tide, and some builds really need an enigma. This is when we actually adjust our last 5 cost tier list according to what build we're going and what the enemies are using. So this is when we become more versatile, and I feel that it's so important to have the first 2 tier lists, because this is what helps us to start the game. And coming back to this overall tier list, I think some of us can see that I am changing some of those compared to the 1 star and 1 cost and 2 cost tier list, because this is an overall summary for the tiers. Now, if any of us have any questions, please leave in the comments below for me to explain a particular thing in detail. This is the start of the overall tier list, and I'm giving everyone a holistic picture of how I see would be helpful for us with the tier list. So please let me know in the comments below, or send me a message on Twitch if I'm streaming. So let me know what you think about my initial test with the tier list, and yeah, please subscribe and like. Thank you very much for watching.